Well, I hope you've had an amazing day so far, and I get the privilege of wrapping up the summit with my talk. I'm Dr. Kim Bynum, and we're going to be talking a little bit about being an unapologetic saleswoman and doing business unapologetically, if that makes sense. So I want to start out by asking you a question. How many of you in this room are in sales? If you'll just raise your hand if you're in sales. Great. Put your hands down, please. How many of you are not in sales? Raise your hand if you are not in sales. Not in sales. Never tried to convince your husband or your bae to take you to Carrabba's instead of Taco Bell? No? Never convinced him to let you get the pair of shoes when you really didn't have it in your budget line item? No? Never tried to convince your 2-year-old to eat his vegetables when he wanted a cookie? No? That's all sales, people. It's all sales. Ever tried to get a job? Anybody that said you weren't in sales ever tried to go on a job interview and sell yourself? That's sales. Ever try to negotiate for a raise? That's sales. Are we starting to get the picture here? So if you thought you were not a saleswoman, you are, and you're in the right place. So just a little bit about me real quick. Again, I'm Dr. Kim Bynum. I spent 21 years in the Navy and transitioned out in 2013. And to my surprise, after 21 years in the military, and I went to the city of Jacksonville to serve with Betsy, and some of you heard Betsy's talk earlier about hyperconnecting. That was quite a shock to go from military to local government. So I did that for a while, and then I moved over to a nonprofit, Wounded Warrior, and then I realized I could just never have a boss again, and I could never punch a time clock again, and that really whittled down what jobs I could have. And so I went into business for myself after I got my doctorate, and now I teach at a couple of universities, and I have my own consulting business. So that's what you see up there, that Kim Bynum Consulting, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Bottom line, that's just a little bit about me, so you guys will actually pay attention and think that maybe I might be able to tell you a little bit about what we're talking about. Oh, I forgot the most important part. In between all of there, I became Sandler trained, so I'm bronze certified and Sandler trained, and added that tool into my toolkit, into my arsenal. I was a surface warfare officer in the Navy, so I always am adding tools in my toolkit, in my arsenal. So let's talk about this thing called unapologetic sales and being an unapologetic saleswoman and doing business unapologetically. And I'd like to share a video with you, if you will give it your full attention.
Sorry, can I ask a stupid question?
Sorry, do you have a minute? Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Sorry.
I have a question. Why don't we go back to the original thing that we did?
Morning. I don't know. Sorry, not sorry. Sorry, not sorry.
Wow, we have to look to a hair product to get our empowerment. I'll take it wherever I can get it. April, what did I do with this thing? Can you help me? Click out of that. So I did some research on this whole saying you're sorry thing. While April figures out how to get that, or I don't know what. I did some research on this whole I'm sorry and how we say I'm sorry. And apparently it was in the news a lot about 4 years ago because there's this video on it, and then Amy Schumer, who is a comedian that I adore, did a skit. And in the skit, she showed all of these amazing women at empowerment panel where they were all up here, and it was like Nobel Peace Prize winners, women that were saving children from African, whatever, human traffickers. It was all these scientists, all these amazing women, and they were on the panel with a dude that was moderating, and they couldn't even get the panel questions answered because they were so busy saying they were sorry to each other and to the audience member and to getting their drink of water, and it was just very sad and epidemic and systemic of what we do all the time as women. How many of you said you're sorry today at some point? I think I've said it 4 times, and I'm over it, and I'm preaching on it, and I'm sure I've said I'm sorry. I hear my daughter, my 14-year-old, say, I'm sorry, and I hear her say it, and I want to go throat punch her. But then I'd have to tell her I'm sorry. I'm just kidding. Okay, so bottom line is, here's what I found with the research about women saying they're sorry. If you do the research, both men and women say they're sorry the same amount. Meaning this, when they believe that they have wronged somebody and owe them an apology, they both apologize about 84% of the time. Both men and women. When they think they've wronged somebody and they believe that they are in the need to give an apology, both men and women give the apology around 84% of the time. But here's the difference with women and why this commercial got made. Our threshold, women's threshold for what we think is needing and deserving of an apology is like this low. So we run around thinking we need to say we're sorry for a lot of stuff. And one of the things that we think we need to say we're sorry for is in our business and doing business and selling. And so that's what we're going to talk about, because we need to stop saying that we're sorry. But before you can stop saying that you're sorry, you have to understand why you do it in the first place. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about your headspace and hopefully help you get over it by the end of today. So let's talk about expectations and what we're going to do today. I've got you until, and since I told you the wrong time for lunch, I want to really make sure I do this right, or else I'm going to hear about it from April. So what time am I supposed to be done? 2:30. Okay, so I'm going to be done at 2:30. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to unprogram you about sales because you've been programmed. You just don't know it. I mean, you do know it, but you just don't realize it. So I'm going to talk to you about the traditional selling system and the way we've all been brought up to be prospects and salespeople in sales. And then I'm going to share a little bit with you about Sandler, which is just the toolkit that I chose as a selling system. I can't teach you how to sell in 45 minutes, so I'm leaving that to Sandler. I'll tell you how to get in touch with them later. And then one of the things that I want to talk about is something called transactional analysis. And this is just the way that we move throughout our emotions, and I think it'll help you with this whole sorry, I'm sorry bit, and help you to do your business a little bit unapologetically and fiercely. Now listen, at the end of our time together, at the end of this training with me, or this talk, or this fun, whatever you, comedian show, whatever you want to call it up here, this is what will happen. Either you're going to get a few nuggets that you're going to take away that you're going to be like, wow, this is really going to help me. It's going to help me in my life, or this is going to help me in my business, or it's going to help me quit saying I'm sorry so much. Okay? Or you're going to say, wow, there's really something to this Sandler system. There's really something to this stuff that Kim's talking about. You want to learn more either about the Sandler selling system, or you're going to want to learn more about working with me. So either one of those is just fine. You learn a little nugget, you take it with you, or you decide you need a little bit more work, and we'll talk about that at the end. Does that sound good? Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's move on. Hopefully we got the clicker working. Oh, she did. She's awesome. Okay, so let's talk about this thing called selling. We all have agreed, I hope that I convinced you, that you're all in sales. You're all selling something, right? Whether it's your actual product, your service, getting more money out of your hubby to get your nails done, which I did have to do this weekend, getting your kid to do what you want him to do, getting your boss to do what you want him to do, whatever it is, we're all in sales. So let's talk about this. Why do I hear over and over from clients and really, from friends, why do we all commiserate about, I just love them, I'm so passionate about what I do, I'm so passionate about my coaching business, so passionate about Plexus, so passionate about this and that. And Stephanie didn't say this, by the way, I just threw in Plexus because I was selling some out there for her. But But they say this, but I just hate selling. Why do we say that? So I'm going to ask you a question. If I was doing a word association game with you, and I said, hey, what word comes to mind when you hear salesperson? What are some words, and you need to say them loud because this is a big room, what are some words that you would say from a word association if somebody were to come up to you and say, okay, what's the first thing you think about when you hear salesperson? Dishonest? Pushy? Slimy? Annoying? Rich! That's a saleswoman right over there. Oh wait, I'm getting video. I mean, good. Anybody else? Slimy, pushy, annoying, aggressive, self-serving, dishonest. Okay, so guess what? Every day of my life, I wake up, I hop out of bed, my 14-year-old's like, hey mom, what do you do for a living? And I say, I'm a saleswoman. What do you think she thinks of me if that's what she's been programmed to believe, and we've been programmed to believe that selling is? Wow. Yuck. No wonder we don't like this idea of selling. Let me talk to you about why this is, though. Why is this? We can't undo it. We can't undo it in our own minds so we can overcome it, because I don't want to be slimy, pushy, aggressive, dishonest, self-serving. Do want to be rich. So I'm going to find a way to overcome all this other junk, right? But before we can overcome it, we got to figure out why in the heck does it exist in our brains anyway. So let me talk to you, and you're gonna agree with me. I'm not gonna have to convince you of anything about the traditional selling system. I have to show you why we think this way about doing business, saying we're sorry every time we call somebody up to ask them if they need another mascara, even though they love our mascara, Carrie Wilson mascara. Well, she doesn't do mascara, but everything else on my face is Carrie Wilson, right? We love the lipstick. She's probably like, oh God, I gotta call Kim and ask her if she wants more lipstick. I'm begging Carrie for every lipstick that she has. So here's the traditional selling system, and I put these bullets up here so you could follow me. All right, so ladies, I'm gonna ask you a question. You're the prospect. You're not in sales now. You're just a prospect out to buy something. I head into Dillard's, and it's time for me to buy an outfit for Navigate a Women's Summit because I have to come up on this stage. And I know exactly what kind of dress fits my body because I've tried on about 17,000 million dresses in my life, and I know that some just are never gonna go on this 5-foot-tall, bootylicious body, right? But when the sales lady comes up and says, you know, and I'm in the Dillard 65% off, 35% off rack, because that's what my budget lady over there says to do, and she comes up and she says, hey, can I help you find anything? What do I say as the prospect? Just looking. I lie. So the poor salesperson is over here probing, needs analysis, nothing wrong with that. Do you need a dress? Going somewhere special? A little black dress? Maybe a little casual outfit for the, picnic? She's just trying to figure out what the heck I need. I didn't tell her though, because I lied. I said, ooh, just looking, right? Now, what does the salesperson have left to do because I've lied to her? She has no idea that I need a nautical-themed, bright dress that's going to go with these gold shoes because they were totally on sale. They'll drive April nuts, and they won't hurt my feet when I run around all day. I mean, she could have found this dress in 2 seconds flat. But since I told her none of that, she's now going to do her presentation in which she proceeds to bring me 58,000 dresses or pants or beachwear or anything because I didn't tell her what I wanted. And she's going to throw it. That's her presentation in this scenario. And I'm going to be like, stop bugging me. No, 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 no. Correct? But I'm not. Well, I would be, but you're not. So I don't want to be mean, hateful, and ugly. So I just lie some more. I'm on the third bullet over here. I just lie some more. No, thanks. That's not what I wanted. No, okay, that's okay. I don't really need that. I just let her keep on bringing them in. I keep on walking around, right? So let me change it up to a car person. Maybe you can understand it better if I tell when you go to the car lot. You know, you go to the car lot and all the guys are just standing there waiting for you. When you walk out, then the one guy swooms over. So you do the same thing, right? He's like, hey, you need a car. You're like, oh, just looking. Or whatever lie you tell him. Then he proceeds to tell you everything in his, arsenal or everything in his inventory of what cars he has. Even though, look, when I went shopping for a car, I wanted a RAV4 with a sunroof and GPS, and I wanted that silver one. I didn't care about anything else. He's telling me about engines and mats and tires, and I'm like, shut up. No, I don't want the Jeep or the truck or the whatever, okay? So then I lie to him, right? So we go into this gathering information mode as the prospect, right? So you go, when that lady's presenting me and throwing me all these dresses, I'm like, well, maybe this is good. Mmaybe she'll find me one, right? So we're gathering information. In the car example, what are we doing? We're gathering information from the salesperson who's giving this presentation. What are we going to do with it? We're gathering information. What are we going to do with it? We're going to go to the next dealership. Does that make sense to you? So we're going back and forth between this game. So we gather information, and then what happens is we're gathering information. The salesperson gets happy thinking that they're going to sell us something because we're gathering information. We're like, oh yeah, that's a nice RAV4. Maybe I'll buy that one. No, it's red. I already know I'm not going to buy it, but I just want to see what price he's going to give me. Then, because it's time to go, because I've been there 4 hours, then it comes this dance between handling objections, overcoming objections. Like, I'm going to have to talk to my husband about it. I don't make any major purchases without his decisions. Never do that. Right? Or I say, you know what, give me time to think it over. I'll come back tomorrow. Or all the other millions of objections that if you are in sales, you've heard. I don't have the money, I don't have the time to think it over, I have to talk to my husband. And we play this game of lying and handling an objection or overcoming an objection, lie, overcome an objection, until one of us gets so tired of it that we give up for then. And then we go into this perpetual game where the salesperson is playing hide and seek. Well, you're playing hide and seek, and he's chasing you around. So the prospect's playing hide and seek, and he's chasing you around, right? So he's calling you, he's emailing you. The sales lady, you went from like the Ruby, what is that, Reba McEntire Ruby line over to the democracy line so she couldn't find you. Then you're like, well, maybe I'll just go over to the petite. She won't find me over there. You know what I'm talking about. You pay for your stuff at a different department. You bought your Calvin Klein dress and then you ran over to the other place. That's the traditional selling system. Why is it this way? It's like combative. It's like awkward and ugly. Why is it this way? Why is sales like this? I asked this question and somebody told me the answer and said, well, remember back in the day, like in the 1800s or whatever, and those snake oil salespeople would come around, or those people with the elixir, aka alcohol, and they would, sell you their wares, and they'd work for a night, and then in the morning they'd be gone, and you'd be hungover. They worked the elixir worked real good and took all your pain away that night. So I don't know if that's the genesis of where this distrust or mistrust came in from selling, but this traditional selling system is what we do. It's just how we've been programmed since I don't know when. Do you agree? Do you not act like this as a prospect? And so does that not reinforce this behavior as a salesperson? And that's just the role we play. It's just what we do. I'm here to tell you, though, that we don't have to do it that way. We don't have to. Where do I click to? So I chose, when I came across the Sandler selling system, thank you. Yeah, you don't want to hear this one. We're not there yet. Oh, did you already help? Am I going the wrong way? There we go. There's the rest of my thing if you want to leave. We're done. That's what you're going to get. Okay, we good? Woo! Man. All right, so I chose the Sandler selling system because one of the things that I liked about it was that it allows both you as a salesperson and the prospect to feel comfortable and confident throughout the entire selling process. And we're going to talk a little bit about why that is and how that is. It also means that as the salesperson, you're not like the scumbag, you're not like the poop on the bottom of the shoe. You're actually on equal footing with the prospect. Does that make sense? And then finally, there's not any what Sandler calls mutual mystification. There's no like surprises. There's no what's going to happen next. You and the prospect, the salesperson and the prospect, both know exactly what's going to happen at each point along the sales process. And so for me, when I saw this and when I was introduced to the selling system, I was like, you know what, I can get behind this because now I don't have to go through this same rigmarole of this traditional selling system where, one, I don't like feeling like I'm scum on the bottom of the shoe. Like I'm not doing that. So I like the idea of being on equal footing with my prospect. And I like the idea of it not being a combative thing, because think about it. What you're doing is you have a product or service, right? Really, most of us are passionate about what we do, what we offer, what we sell, or we wouldn't be doing it, I hope. And so you don't want to feel like you have to fight somebody and pull it, shove it down their throat for them to offer you money in return for that, correct? And so this is just a selling system that allows you the opportunity to provide a product or service that you're passionate about in exchange for dollars, and it's just an exchange instead of this combative fight that the traditional selling system makes you go through. So let's talk a little bit about how the selling system does that. And like I said, it's up here. So what Sandler does is, bottom line is in all sales, you're going to create bonding and rapport and trust. Okay, you do that with everybody. You create the relationship first, and that's not rocket science. There's a lot of tools and techniques that you can use that Sandler teaches on how to do that, and I don't have time to go into it. But here's the part that's important. I was at a women's empowerment conference that I was a panelist for last Friday, and somebody asked me the question, how did you deal with men, or how do you deal with men hitting on you when you're trying to sell them stuff? And these were 20-something-year-old women that gorgeous, and they're in pharmaceutical sales or medical device sales. They got hired because they're hot. That's not the only reason they got hired, people. These women are brilliant. Let me caveat that. But they're very good looking. Because why? Because the traditional selling system, that's part of our game, right? And so now they're talking to me, or one's a financial advisor as well. And they said, well, how do I do this? How do I have this business relationship with, they were talking about men, but in general, how do I have this business relationship with these people so that they'll take me seriously, and so it's not just about how I look, right? And so that goes to the Sandler selling system and getting out of that mode of the traditional selling system. And the way that you do that is you manage expectations through this second step, which is called an upfront contract. And an upfront contract is merely a way of managing expectations so that instead of the traditional selling system, which is what everybody's used to, you, as the salesperson, are going to manage expectations, and you are going to tell your prospect up front what's going to happen. You're going to tell them up front what's going to happen. So I'm going to try to click, and I'm trying not to freak myself out here. This is an upfront contract. I told you how long we were going to spend together. How many times have you been somewhere or had a meeting with somebody and you said, hey, you thought it was going to be an hour long, or you thought it was going to be 30 minutes long, and then you get there and they're like, oh yeah, sorry, I only have 15 minutes for you. Oh, sorry, gotta go, or the phone rings. How many times has it happened to you? If you're in sales, how many times have you gotten the boot or had a meeting cut short? Okay, so managing expectations and this upfront contract, you make sure up front that they agree to the time that they said they were going to spend with you. So we have 45 minutes together, and I'm expecting that all of you are going to sit there, and I made you say what time we were leaving. You just thought I was acting dumb about what time we were leaving. Okay, and then I told you what the agenda was, okay? This is what I want to get out of this. This is what I'm going to do for you. And in the Sandler, we would be talking about your agenda. Your agenda is to come here and, get a smidge. But the most important thing about an upfront contract and managing expectations is you're going to tell your prospect, this is the part you need to really get. This is the gold. You're going to tell your prospect what the outcomes of your meeting are going to be, what his or her choices are in the beginning. That's what I told you with the outcomes. I told you what the outcomes were going to be before we even started. You're either going to get a little bit of a nugget, or you're going to want to know more about Sandler, or you're going to want to work with me and get coached. And you know what y'all did? You nodded your heads and you said, yep, I'm going to agree to that. You did. Now, the other option I didn't give you, which I sometimes do, is you're going to think this next 45 minutes is a complete waste of your time. I'm not even giving you that option. Do you hear what I'm saying? So what does that look like in your world? So hey, when we spoke on the phone, you said we had an hour to meet. Is an hour still good for you? Yes? Great. They just agreed to give you their full undivided attention for an hour. Look, when we spoke on the phone, you said you had some questions about X, Y, and Z. Fantastic, I'm going to answer those for you. And I've got some questions for you too. We need to make sure blah, 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 whatever. Their agenda, your agenda. At the end of a call like this, or a meeting like this, or a Zoom like this, typically one of two things happens, or one of three things happens, whatever happens in your world. Either you're going to schedule a coaching package with me for 12 grand, or you're going to decide we're not a good fit to work together. And I'm okay with either one. Are you okay with either one of those? You're okay with telling me no if we're not a good fit? Can you do this? You just told them what the outcome's going to be. It's not rocket science. Because you know what they're used to? They're used to that old crap where you dance around and you try to guess what they're thinking, how much money they have, and we lie and we run around and we play this cat and mouse game. No, that's not what we do. This is business. You're not sorry, and we're on equal footing, and that's the upfront contract. Man, I'm not good with a clicker. All right, I want to get real with you right here. I want to get real. You're not going to like this one. You perform in a manner consistent with your self-worth. You perform in a manner consistent with your self-worth. And you may think you're done with your past, but it is not done with you. What does that mean? Angie's back there smiling. She knows. Let me tell you what it means. It means that you make as much money as you think you deserve to make. Oh, what? It means you make as much money as you think you deserve to make. You charge people for your services or your product what you think you're worth charging. You discount your prices if you have issues with self-worth. You give away your stuff for free. We call that unpaid consulting in Sandler. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I'm not talking about stuff I learned in a book. I'm talking about stuff I know and I live. It doesn't mean that, let me give you an example. So what does that mean? So I have a friend who's in my tribe, and we were talking on the phone the other day about what she was going to charge a client. She started a business. She wanted to know what she was talking to me about how did I set up a pay structure for a client that was on retainer, because she hadn't done that before. She had just done project-based. So we talked about it, told her how to come up with the amount, or at least how I thought she'd come up with the amount, and the amount came out to be $25,000 a month. And I promise you that was the right amount. It wasn't in fact, it was a good amount. I mean, a conservative amount. And she was like, holy Joes, that's a lot of money. A lot of money to her, not a lot of money to the organization that was looking to hire her for her services. Just like when you negotiate for a raise. If you think a $5,000 raise is a big chunk of change to your organization, it's a lot to you. Okay, so again, how big your house is that you live in is the house you think that you deserve to live in. So where does this self-concept come from? I can tell you where mine came from. I'll just tell you. My mom left 3 days before my 8th birthday. She didn't come back until I was 13. My dad got remarried straight after she left. They had another family and had other kids, and me and my sister were just whatever. I know where it comes from. I know where the crappy money concept comes from. I know where my sense of self-worth or lack of it comes from. I know I have issues charging the money for the results I deliver. Okay? So what are we going to do about it? You need to understand where this stuff stems from if you're ever going to get past it. How many of you can relate? Am I just up here talking to myself, or can you guys relate to not charging what you're worth, discounting your services or your products, not negotiating for a raise because you think your boss should just know and just give you one? Does your husband do that? Does your boyfriend do stuff without you asking? Your boss really isn't going to. Okay. All right, so let me get to this and so we can get to the action items. So transactional analysis, I have to give you this because I think it's so important when it comes to being able to maneuver through selling, and really this is just life stuff, this isn't even selling. Transactional analysis is something that a psychologist named Burns came up with. David Sandler and the Sandler system adopted it as part of his training and as part of his system because he thought it was so powerful. And what it is there are 3 ego states that Burns talked about, and it's not like Sigmund Freud's ego, id, and superego. These are the ego states up here: parent, adult, and child, okay? And we maneuver up and down through these ego states throughout the day. The parent ego state is all your programming about rules. So what if I said to you right now, children should be seen and not heard? How in the world do you know that? What if I were to, hey, Diane, how much do you weigh? Do we all know that that was really a rude question? What if I asked somebody how much money they made? Is that a rude question? It's not polite to ask so many questions. Okay, so all that stuff that I just said, those are rules that have been programmed into us. Half of those rules that I just said, how much do you make? You're not supposed to ask that. Children should be seen and not heard. Don't ask so many questions. A lot of those things are things that salespeople kind of have to do. We have to interrupt. We have to ask questions. We have to talk about your money. We have to overcome all that programming. The child state is about all the programming from your emotions. So like when your mom and dad wouldn't give you what you wanted and you threw a temper tantrum, and then they would give it to you. Okay, that's not this generation, never mind, at least not mine. I'll get my butt whipped. And then they would give you what you wanted because you went into that adapted child because you threw your tantrum. That's a learned response, okay? So parent has 2 ego states inside of it. Parent has critical and nurturing. The critical parent is just what you think. Oh, Kim, what the heck's wrong with you? You got 5 A's and 2 B's. Why couldn't you get all the A's? The nurturing parent is just what it sounds like, nurturing. Oh, good job. You can do it. Try again harder next time. And then the adult ego state is just that one that's in the middle, objective, logical, not emotional. And then the child state, like I said, that's the emotional state. Adapted child is the one that's like throwing a tantrum, I'm freezing you guys, throwing a tantrum, losing their mind, just really basically is responding to that adult critical parent, right? And then the natural child, I like to think of the natural child as the dreamer, the free-loving one, the kid that's running naked through the sprinkler in the summertime. That's the natural child, like, woohoo, yeah. Sometimes responding to that nurturing parent, giving them some love, okay? And the reason why this is important is, I'll ask you this question first. When people are buying, are they buying from logic or from emotions? Emotions, right? We all know we buy emotionally. We kind of learned that by now. Which of these ego states relates to emotions? Child. So if you're a salesperson, where do you need your prospect to be? No, you need them to be in child. If you want them to buy, okay, so this is, I'm telling you, Wendy, this is gold for you right here, because she's like, they need to be an adult. No, they don't. They rationalize it, so then you want them like this. I love this house. This is exactly the house I ever wanted. And the stairs go like this and it has a fireplace. And I can put my thing right here, my chair. That's child. And then later I'll be like, and I can totally afford the payments, and it's going to have a great place. The garage is big enough. That's adult. I'm all logicking it out. Okay, we buy in the child state. So you need to know this transactional analysis because you need to understand these child states so you can move your prospect from one to the other. However, you also need to understand that you have a choice which child state you are operating in. And a lot of times, because of this programming, we're running around operating in an ego state just because that's our habit or because we think we don't have any control over it. Critical parent. How many of you run around in critical parent to yourself in your own head all the freaking time? You suck, you're fat. Was I not just talking about this? I gave up on my 50th countdown. Gonna be fat and gonna drink and eat too much. So critical parent, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not worth it, they'll never pay you this much, Kim, for your coaching, right? That's critical parent inside your own mind. So yes, there is a time to be adult. If you're selling to somebody, here's the deal, if you're selling to somebody and they don't know the rules and they're still trying to be all traditional selling on you and trying to be all critical parent and trying to give you some objections and trying to do all this crap, they're in critical parent. What do you have to do to get them out of critical parent so you can get somewhere? Now you have to go to adult, that objective, logical, normal, even-keeled person, right? So that you can get them out of that yucky stuff, right? So navigating through these ego states can be very helpful to you. And knowing that you have a choice in which ego state you're in, how many of you have ever had somebody come up to you and be critical of you for something, and you go straight into adapted child? I do it with my friends. Me and April do that to each other all the time because she holds me accountable for stuff. She's like, Kim, you know you're going to get videoed. Can you please? It's going to be forever. And I came over and slunk away like a little kid. It was complete. She wasn't critical parent. She was being adult. But I slunk over in my adapted child. I was like, oh, okay. I mean, that was for real, I did that. All right, so you got it. These things, I can't teach everything. Sandler writes a book. What's the book that Sandler has? You can't teach a kid to ride a bike in a seminar. That's how I feel right now. I have so much good stuff for you. All right, but I want to give you some takeaways before my time runs out. This is what we're all about. We've got 5 minutes. This is what it's all about. Takeaways and to put stuff into actionable, put it into action. I can't think of a word after actionable. So here's what I want you to do. That upfront contract I talked to you about, setting expectations at the beginning of the meeting is absolutely critical. Okay? So you need to tell your prospect or whoever it is you're talking to, your boss, whatever, what you expect your outcome to be. Tell them how long, tell them what your agenda is, tell them what their agenda is, and then tell them what the heck outcome you expect to happen. They're not going to know that they're not under the traditional selling system with you anymore. They're not going to know. You have to tell them in the upfront contract. Oh, that's the second one. There it is. It's all rolled up into one. Number 3. Do I number these? Yeah. Overcome your crappy money concept. You're like, yeah, thanks, Kim. How do you do that? Here's how. Number 1, go to therapy. Number 2, somebody always tells us to go to therapy. Go to therapy. Number 2, here's a book you can read. You know, it's Jen Sincero, Sincero, and it's called You Are a Badass at Making Money. You can also get a really great tribe. April's my very best accountability partner, and you can talk to them when you're doing your stuff, and they'll tell you, are you freaking kidding me? That's all you charged? Or luckily you call them beforehand and they'll be like, what are you thinking about charging? Did you do your contract, your proposal? What are you thinking about doing? No, you are not. No, that is not enough. How many of you have a tribe that holds you accountable that you could call and run your stuff by? Keep you on track. You better get one. Who doesn't have their hand? You add me. Facebook me right now. I will be glad to kick your butt and tell you to charge more money. All right, good. And then that transactional analysis, choosing the ego state that you're in. Guys, do not be a slave to your emotions. Do not think that you don't have control over the ego state that you're operating in. And most importantly, don't let that critical parent, that constant voice in your head, roll on and on and on to you. Get back into adult or nurturing parent, whichever makes you happier. Tell yourself you can do it, right? Be encouraging. And then my final one is, if you are in sales or you are trying to convince your husband to get you into Carrabba's instead of Taco Bell, or salsas like we're always at, get him into child state. And if I gotta tell you how to get your hubby into child state, there's no hope. All right, so listen, Sandler training, like I said, has been such a blessing to me for my business, actually personally as well, relationships, communication. There's so much that I wanted to share with you, but I wanted to stick with what I thought would be most impactful for being an unapologetic saleswoman and doing business unapologetically. They've got a boot camp that's coming up where they actually give you the entire Sandler system. I only talked about upfront contracts. There's 7 steps in that selling system, and they do that in a day. Coming up September 27th is a boot camp, and there's a fee for that. It's a 1-day overview of the selling system, and you can contact, there's the information, and Stacy's here. There's Stacy. You guys can talk to Stacy if you like. Also, Sandler is our signature sponsor for Navigate a Women's Summit, so if you'll give it up for Sandler for being such a great sponsor. They're a big reason we're here today, and that your ticket prices are as cheap as they are. And then another great way to learn about Sandler is their Crash a Class, and they have classes on Monday afternoons, and you can go and check out a free class and see what they're all about. All right, so, and then ending up with me, bottom line is I talked a little bit about what I do. I work with corporations, organizations, small businesses, and also do private executive coaching. My niche is conflict resolution. That's where I live. So if you've got people that aren't getting along, that's what I like to do. I like to work with small businesses that are successful or were successful, but now they're plateauing or they're starting to kind of tinker out. We can get them back on track. And that's how I do it. I'll come in and assess you, diagnose, de-escalate, redirect, and then chart your new course. We can talk free for 15 minutes. There's my Calendly that my wonderful efficiency strategist taught me how to do just a couple of months ago. So happy that she's in my life. It's 2:31. It's time for closing remarks and prizes.